Good afternoon and welcome back to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina as we continue in the hearing in docket 2023-154-E. This docket and hearing concerns the 2023 Integrated Resource Plan filing by the South Carolina Public Service Authority, also known as Santee Cooper. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. Attending virtually, we have Commissioner Urban present in the hearing room. We have Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carolee Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. We are on intervener witnesses, but I understand Attorney Elliott has a matter.
Yes, ma'am, if I may. Consistent with our discussions and your request with respect to scheduling, the parties have been kind enough to agree to protect my witness, Mr. Pollock, from testifying today. He'll be here at the call of the commission in the morning.
Okay.
That may have it certainly has an impact on the next witness, which will fall to Google, and it may have an impact on the ORS, and I defer to them now for that conversation.
Well, by regulation, ORS gets to go last, and I doubt that they're going to waive that. So
that's my understanding.
So that's fine. Thank you for the heads up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. With that, our next witness is the Google witness. Is that correct? Yes. Ms. Shade?
solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Shade, is that microphone on?
Now it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Gaby, if you could state your name for the record, please.
Devin Gaby.
And where are you employed?
I'm employed by Strategy Consulting.
Okay. And in what capacity?
My title is Clean Energy Planning Manager.
Okay. How long have you been with Strategy?
1 year.
Okay. And prior to Strategy, have you had any other work in utility business?
Yes. Prior to Strategy, I was employed by Ascend Analytics as the manager of software services for about 5 years.
Okay. And do you work with utilities now at Strategy?
I work in reviewing and analyzing many utility plans.
Okay. Does that include IRP plans?
Yes, it does.
All right. And who are you appearing today on behalf of?
On behalf of Google.
Okay. And Mr. Gaby, have you caused to be prepared or prepared revised direct testimony of 54 pages that was filed in this matter's docket November 17th, 2023?
Yes, I have.
And can you explain to the commission the subject of the revision or why it was revised? Was anything material in the testimony revised from our first filing?
Nothing was materially changed. The original testimony was submitted jointly with me and my colleague, Maria Rumpani. We were informed by the clerk that testimony had to be submitted separately for two different witnesses or a single witness appearing, sponsoring this testimony. So we worked on it collaboratively together and determined the best approach was for me to sponsor it independently. And nothing else was changed from the testimony.
Thank you. And at this point, do you have any changes you need to communicate regarding your pre-filed direct testimony, revised direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I were to ask you on the witness stand, all the questions that are included in your direct testimony today, would your responses be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this time, I request to move into the record the revised pre-filed testimony of Mr. Gaby.
Mr. Gaby's pre-filed revised direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Gaby, were there any exhibits that you included with your testimony?
Yes. We originally submitted three exhibits, exhibits 1, 2, and 3. Exhibit 1 was Maria Rumpani's resume, and so I don't believe we'll be submitting that today, but the other ones will be.
Okay, and that's Exhibits 2 and 3?
Correct.
Madam Chair, at this time, I move into the record Exhibits 2 and 3, which were part of the revised pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Gaby.
And I believe Exhibit 3 contains confidential information.
That's correct.
Okay. We will accept Mr. Gaby's exhibits that are listed as Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3. They will be a composite exhibit, and the confidential designation remains, and Exhibit 3 will be maintained as confidential under seal. That will be marked for hearing as hearing Exhibit 20 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Gaby, have you prepared pre-filed revised surrebuttal testimony that was filed with this commission in this docket November 17th, 2023, consisting of 23 pages?
Yes.
And do you have any changes or corrections today to your pre-filed surrebuttal testimony?
No.
And if I were to ask you those questions that are set forth in your surrebuttal testimony today, would your responses be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would ask for the pre-filed revised surrebuttal testimony be moved into the record as if given orally.
Mr. Gaby's pre-filed revised surrebuttal testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Gaby, have you prepared summaries of both your revised direct testimony and revised surrebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Could you please provide those summaries to the commission, beginning with your direct testimony?
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the commission. As stated, I'm employed by Strategy Consulting, who have been hired by Google to provide expert testimony in this case. Strategy is an impact-driven firm with expertise in developing innovative, practical solutions that capture the promise of a clean energy future, strengthen resilience and adaptability, while also designing these solutions to be equitable, collaborative, and impactful. Strategy employs a team of approximately 50 experts who leverage a global perspective and market-leading capabilities to deliver novel, high-impact approaches across the policy, regulatory, and market design spheres that sustainably accelerate the deployment of low-carbon energy systems. My area of expertise consists of capacity expansion and production cost modeling, integrated resource plan review, and fossil fuel retirement and replacement analysis. At Strategy, I have reviewed resource plans in Michigan, Oregon, Kentucky, Indiana, and Colorado. In my prior position as manager at Ascend Analytics, I've supported utilities directly in modeling their own portfolios. These utilities include the likes of Duke Energy, New York Power Authority, NRG, AES, and nearly half a dozen utilities in California as well. The purpose of my direct testimony is to explain my findings of my review of Santee Cooper's proposed IRP, identify key conclusions drawn, and present my recommendations to the Public Service Commission for consideration in this case. Broadly speaking, my recommendations focus on the opportunity for Santee Cooper to take a proactive approach to planning that seeks to create constructive partnerships with Central, its member co-ops, and its large customers, and use these partnerships to develop critical grid infrastructure to alleviate resource adequacy concerns, including the accelerated deployment of carbon-free investments such as solar and battery storage. As the energy industry continues to transition towards more diverse fuel sources, we encourage Santee Cooper to recognize that carbon-free, reliable energy is now a key priority for many of its customers, and that businesses are taking a more active role in determining where their energy comes from and how it's generated. I'm encouraged by the statements made previously during this hearing by the Santee Cooper witnesses regarding cooperation with Google and other customers, and we welcome pursuing opportunities with them. The findings of my review of the IRP, as laid out in my direct testimony, can be summarized as follows. Number one, the preferred portfolio presents resource adequacy and reliability risks that can be mitigated by higher levels of investment in quickly deployable carbon-free resources, including those pursued in collaboration with large customers. Number two, the IRP lacks sufficient detail on the need for transmission upgrades and how those needs might change across portfolios. More detailed analysis would help identify options for unlocking reliability, cost, and energy benefits for Santee Cooper. Number three, further analysis is needed on alternative coal retirement schedules, the costs and benefits of the central PPAs, as well as the costs and risks of the proposed gas plant. Santee Cooper's modeling methodology and assumptions should be improved to ensure that a full range of portfolio options are considered with appropriate costs, benefits, and risks. My recommendations to the Commission are as follows. Number one, Santee Cooper should consider an accelerated investment schedule in fast deploying solar and storage resources to address its near-term capacity and energy needs. As part of this effort, Santee Cooper should coordinate with Central, its member co-ops, and large customers in its service territory to develop a program that can expedite the deployment of these resources. Number two, the Commission should direct Santee Cooper to conduct a transmission planning analysis to present before its next IRP, showing the estimated transmission upgrades and costs that different replacement resources would require, and identifying no regrets investments. The analysis should consider additional strategies to enhance the transmission capability of the system, including the use of surplus interconnection capacity, investment in grid-enhancing technologies, proactive evaluation of regional or interregional transmission projects to allow for access to future wind resources, among others, evaluation of higher voltage levels, identification of follow-on upgrades to integrate new capacity, and the use of the Inflation Reduction Act funding and financing options for transmission projects. Third recommendation is the Commission should direct Santee Cooper to update its current IRP analysis to include a scenario that allows for the economic retirement of the coal units on a per unit basis, i.e. allowing for the phased retirement of both Winya and Cross. This scenario should further properly account for the reliability contribution of thermal resources, including the proposed shared facility, allow storage of 8 hours of duration to be selected starting in 2026, and update the capital and fixed O&M costs of the natural gas combined cycle unit to align with publicly available cost projections and address fuel deliverability concerns. This concludes the summary of my direct testimony. Thank you.
Ms. Shayad, your mic is off.
Thank you, Mr. Gaby. If you would also provide a summary of your revised surrebuttal testimony.
Yes. The purpose of my surrebuttal testimony is to address certain issues raised in the rebuttal testimonies of Santee Cooper witnesses McCants, Painter, Wagner, and Kushner, and provide my recommendations in light of Santee Cooper's response. These issues include the reliability risk posed by the resources selected in its preferred portfolio, Santee Cooper's self-imposed limits on solar resource additions, further discussion of the transmission planning efforts, and Santee Cooper's NGCC capital and O&M cost calculations. I found issue with several of the reliability assumptions that witness McCants made, particularly with the use of nameplate capacity for all units in their planning reserve margin, as opposed to a derated firm capacity based on their historical performance. Just as Santee Cooper derates solar and storage based on their effective load carrying capacity, or ELCC, the same approach should be applied for the historical performance of their existing thermal resources. I also addressed witness Painter's justification for limiting solar deployment to 300 megawatts per year and gave reasons why I believe these were overly conservative constraints. Provided clarifying detail on the transmission recommendations from my direct testimony in response to witness Wagner's rebuttal on the topic, And finally, I identified an issue in witness Kushner's calculations for the NGCC capital and O&M cost comparisons and provided a revised calculation. My recommendations from my rebuttal testimony include all the recommendations from my direct testimony and provide further specific guidance on several key points. These recommendations can be summarized as follows. Number one, the Commission should require Santee Cooper to implement an expedited investment schedule in carbon-free resources, accelerating the planned deployment in the preferred portfolio of 1,800 megawatts of solar from 2026 to 2031, accelerating it by 2 years to a new target of 450 megawatts per year between 2026 and 2029. Number two, the Commission should direct Santee Cooper to pursue a new C&I customer program in partnership with Central, its member co-ops, and large customers in its service territory to further accelerate the deployment of new capacity and carbon-free resources as a means to allow for the economic development of the region while minimizing costs and risks for non-participating customers. Number three, the Commission should direct Santee Cooper to properly account for the reliability contribution of thermal resources by filing a plan that includes derating the total firm capacity of the existing Santee Cooper generation fleet by 355 megawatts in accordance with each unit's historical forced outage rate to better account for winter performance. Additionally, this plan should include the derated firm capacity of the proposed shared NGCC facility based on its projected forced outage rate. The updated plan should incorporate additional clean capacity resources to address the capacity shortfall that occurs from this derating. Number four, the Commission should direct Santee Cooper to update the capital and O&M costs of the NGCC resource in their base cost assumptions to align with publicly available cost projections. Further, Santee Cooper should perform an additional cost sensitivity analysis by increasing both the publicly available capital cost and O&M costs by 50% each to assess the cost risk of this resource. This concludes the summary of my rebuttal testimony. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Gaby is available for cross-examination and questions from the commissioners.
Thank you. Sierra Club,
No questions.
Sasiba,
No questions, thank you.
SACE CCL,
Good afternoon, Mr. Gaby, Kate Mixon, representing South Carolina Coastal Conservation League and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. I just have a very brief questions for you. You testified that you believed Santee Cooper's ELCC value for 8-hour storage was too low. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you explain further why you made that recommendation?
Generally speaking, from my experience, 8-hour storage, duration storage is typically considered to be a fully firm resource. This is what I've seen in other IRPs across the country. I also know that in this plan, Santee Cooper relied on analysis done for Duke by Astrape for the 8-hour storage ELCC. So I believe that my recommendation would be that Santee Cooper should be performing their own ELCC analysis of 8-hour storage in their system and update the ELCC accordingly.
Thank you. You also testified that Santee Cooper did not allow selection of longer duration storage in most of their modeling runs. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you believe that Santee Cooper could feasibly deploy higher levels of storage resources on a faster timeline than they assumed in their IRP?
I do. I also believe that, as you said, they should be considering including 8-hour storage beyond just the 4-hour batteries that are included in the model. I think there is potentially some concern from Santee Cooper about longer duration resources being newer technologies, perhaps, that they feel less comfortable with. But from my experience, I can use an example of a utility I used to work with at Ascent, Peninsula Clean Energy in California. They have their portfolio consists of only 4-hour duration storage batteries, but they operate them as 8-hour resources by essentially limiting the power output that they provide. So if it's a 100 megawatt 4-hour battery, they operate it as a 50 megawatt battery, doubling the duration. And so that gives an opportunity for Santee Cooper to use a very essentially conventional at this point resource in a more effective way.
Thank you. And so could deploying storage in the near term help Santee Cooper with some of the near term resource adequacy concerns that you discussed in your testimony?
Absolutely. As has been discussed by other witnesses, adding more solar does increase some of the variability in generation, but battery storage can really supplement that installation of solar resources with the flexibility that they offer to be able to match the net load contributions.
Thank you. Did you hear Santee Cooper witness's testimony from earlier in this hearing about developing a pilot project for battery resources before deploying them on Santee Cooper system?
I may have missed the exact time just as I was traveling, but if you want to tell me exactly what this said, or
I guess subject to check.
Yeah, sure.
How are you generally aware that they have discussed developing a pilot project for battery storage resources?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned in your direct testimony a Dominion Energy Virginia pilot program deploying 100-hour storage. Is that right? And I believe it's on page 17.
17.
Line
let me
12
double-check.
of your direct testimony.
Correct, yes.
And that project is expected to be operational in 2026. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. 100-hour storage. Would you describe that more as the cutting edge of battery storage technology?
Yes, that would be the type of project I was referring to as more cutting edge.
Not 4-hour storage.
Correct.
So given the state of battery technology and the levels of deployment today, does it seem necessary for Santee Cooper to conduct a pilot on, say, 4-hour battery storage before deploying batteries on a system?
It does not necessarily make sense to me. 4-hour batteries are in operation at utility scale widely across the country, including in this general region. And so I think there's plenty of experience and comfort across many utilities in using 4-hour storage.
Great. Thank you. Those are all of my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mixon. Central Electric Power Cooperative? Santee Cooper Industrial Customer Group? Santee Cooper?
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Gabby, good afternoon. My name is Ashley Cooper. I'm an attorney on behalf of Santee Cooper. Just have a couple of questions for you. And I'm going to use the Elmo one more time. See if that shows up. So this is a chart that's based off of, it's right out of Santee Cooper's IRP, if you look at page AD 44, table 2-5, this is just showing this information. And it's just a high-level snapshot. You mentioned the need to accelerate the deployment of renewables and address carbon, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So if you look at this, this is a snapshot of the direction that Santee Cooper is planning to go. And if you look at the far right, that's coal. Do you see that?
I do.
And what direction is that going?
It's going down.
Okay. And then do you see a line that says BESS?
I do.
And there are additions happening over the years in battery storage, correct?
Correct. If I may ask, I can't see the labels on the bottom. Shift it up slightly.
Yeah, sorry.
Years. Thank you.
And then you see to the left where it says solar, it's a pretty big jump, right?
Yes, it is relative to the other resources. I would agree.
Would you agree that's the largest increase relative to other resources?
Yes.
And if I showed you 3,000, the line that's going across, it's subject to check, that represents an average day load in the shoulder months, spring, for Santee Cooper. So just by comparison, its average day right now, 3,000. It's putting on eventually, it's planning for more solar than an average shoulder month day, subject to check.
By 2052, correct.
Okay. Now, I understand that you have issues and would like to see this move forward faster, but Google's actually a retail customer of Berkeley Electric Co-op, correct?
Correct.
And Berkeley Electric Co-op is a wholesale requirements customer of Central Electric Co-op, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So have you discussed your priorities and your energy needs from your actual retail providers?
I have not personally. I cannot comment on whether Google has had conversations directly with them.
Okay. I think that's it. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Office of Regulatory Staff,
No questions for this witness, Madam Chair.
thank you. Ms. Shade? Mr. Gaby, thank you for your, oh, I'm sorry.
Very quick.
Commissioners. I must have had too much lunch, a little drowsy.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Thomas,
thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Appreciate you being here. So Google has, as I understand, one location in South Carolina. Is that correct?
That is what I'm familiar with, yes.
Okay. And do you know how many employees Google has in South Carolina at that location or generally?
I do not know.
Okay. And anyway, I was going to ask if you know how much energy per employee is used, but obviously you don't have the answer to that
Yeah,
question.
unfortunately, I don't have either the energy used or the customers, or sorry, the employees.
Right. Well, so Google has been a very innovative company for a long time now. And I know that you put in your testimony that they became carbon neutral by 2007. And that's an impressive achievement. And also by 2017, they became the first large company to match 100% of its global consumption with renewable energy per your testimony. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So does Google, as far as you know, plan to continue to be a leader and innovative?
Yeah. Again, I'm not employed by Google, and I'm not wholly familiar, but from what I understand, Google has an additional objective to reach 24/7 carbon-free generation for its electricity consumption, meaning that currently they're basically the total amount of energy is being offset by renewable energy, but they want to be able to do that on a hourly basis, essentially.
Okay. And you mentioned in both your direct and rebuttal testimony some creative things that have occurred. You just now mentioned something going on in Virginia with 100-hour storage, but you mentioned some stuff going on out in Nevada that Google was involved in. So basically, my question is, do you believe that Google would be interested in innovative solutions in South Carolina?
I think they are looking for ways to collaborate with the utilities here to achieve these aggressive goals. The Nevada project that you referenced is a really good example of that. They essentially they have a data center in Nevada served by Nevada Energy. And they collaborated with Nevada Energy to procure, I believe it's a 350 megawatt solar and up to 280 megawatt storage project that is going to essentially serve their data center needs. And so these types of collaborations allow for the opportunity to bring on very large scale resources. As we've discussed, Santee Cooper's target is 300 megawatts of solar per year in the near term. And this project was larger than that on its own. And so kind of through these partnerships, they're able to really accelerate that deployment. And I think, that's the hope here is that, with Santee Cooper's help and with Central and under the coordination agreement that could be kind of replicated.
Okay. And you mentioned just a little while ago that battery technology is not new. And I think the first battery was created back about 1800, so it's pretty old technology. But would you agree that it is an evolving technology?
I would not classify lithium-ion batteries as an evolving technology. I think the same way that natural gas plants have incremental improvements in efficiency and other kind of minor evolvements as different industrial companies basically build slightly better engines, but you wouldn't classify a combined cycle as an evolving technology. I think lithium-ion is essentially in that class of it's a very well understood technology. I think there are pieces that are still developing as we kind of deploy it at very large scales across the country, but at the levels that we're talking about here, I would not call it an evolving technology.
But there are other battery storage technologies that we're hearing a lot about.
Yes.
And so I'm really more referring to the potential out there to come for new technology.
Sure.
Would you agree that that's occurring?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying. Absolutely. There's many different additional storage technologies, batteries, chemical, thermal, that are, I would definitely also classify as emerging technologies. And some of them are showing a lot of promise. I think it's been mentioned by prior witnesses, or even this Dominion one in Virginia are kind of pilot examples of different technologies. But yes, I would agree with that.
And would you agree that as technologies advance and change, then that does involve potential risk as new things come online?
Yes, there's certainly risk as these technologies are evolving. I would also say that there is risk of not considering the possibility of resources that may become available during this planning horizon that Santee Cooper is looking at. There's a lot of different ways to model these different storage technologies in the Encompass model and other capacity expansion production cost models that do not necessarily require knowing specific parameters to a certain type of technology. For example, you don't necessarily need to model an iron air battery to be able to understand what the benefit of long duration storage would be to a system, broadly speaking. And then as these technologies do evolve, subsequent IRPs can be used to update and refine the inputs to your model to more accurately reflect the latest information.
Okay. And as things change, it can present risks to customers or utilities or whatever. And what I'm thinking about at this point in time is there's been discussion about risk associated with investing more in natural gas plants, and then that ended up being, outside the environmental requirements, and that could become a stranded asset. Have you heard that discussed in this proceeding?
Yes.
And what I'm thinking or wondering about is we've also heard discussion about is this batteries a 15-year life or a 30-year life? And I don't know that we know the answer to that. I mean, there are arguments on both sides of that equation. Would you agree that there might not be a 100% correct answer to is it a 15 or a 30 or something else?
Yeah. I think, to your point, there is risks with all of these resource options. There's unknowable risk with a lot of nearly every aspect of a planning case, right? You have risks, asset-specific risks about their lifetime, about their costs, about their operating performance. There's fuel price volatility risks, fuel supply risks, load, like everything can change. So, but being able to quantify and analyze the different resource options in the plan allows the utility to be more informed in making the decisions about what is the least risk and least cost portfolio.
And the reason I'm talking about change and risk and potential stranded assets, whether it's batteries that you thought were going to last 30 years and they only last 15 years, I'm impressed with what Google has been doing and trying to innovate and trying to come up with solutions. And I'm just wondering, are there things going on in South Carolina that Google could get interested in where they could end up being an investor in some of this technology? It's very important to them. Can they take on some of the risk by putting some of the money in and helping make things move forward in a cooperative manner that takes some of the risk off of the customers? Do you think the company would be open to pursuing those sorts of things in South Carolina?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of Google's main objectives is to be able to create the type of program that works with Santee Cooper that supports both Santee Cooper's resource reliability, resource adequacy needs, Google's own objectives and priorities of reliable electricity generation for their data centers, the sustainability goals that we mentioned, while at the same time designing this program so that the risk is really on Google or any large customer who kind of participates in this program and avoids putting that risk of investment on your typical ratepayer.
Well, there are a lot of different layers in this particular proceedings. Like I think you mentioned, the Google is a customer of the Berkeley Co-op, who is part of Central, who is part of Santee Cooper, and so that adds definitely some complexity to the whole. How does this work together? But there are others, and I'm not just talking about Santee Cooper or asking about at this point in time. I'm talking or asking about other potential partners, whether there are other large industrial or whatever that Google might be willing to team up with, or the other investor-owned utilities in the state. I think there are a lot of different ways that this could be looked at in order to try to make progress that helps take risk away from the customers. And so my question for you is, do you see anything that this commission can do in this proceeding to perhaps help move that along?
I think the recommendation really would be for the commission to direct Santee Cooper to engage in these discussions with Central, with Google, and any of the large industrial customers who are interested in this type of program, direct them to begin discussions on type of program. It will obviously require collaboration between all parties to ensure a solution is designed to benefit all parties without any adverse impact to the non-participants. But these are, this probably is not a program that could be developed within this case today. But I think that can definitely be an outcome of the case, would be to have those discussions and begin planning for that.
Well, there are a lot of people in the room that I believe would agree with you, and my hope would be is that productive conversations are already going on, and if they're not, I hope that they'll get started. There's some people in this room that know a lot about it, and some large customers and people that represent big customers, and kind of covers the gambit. So I would hope that we're hearing a lot of disagreement and fighting, but I think there's room for working together as well. And I appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Commissioners, further questions? Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gabby, for being here. In your testimony and just things that you put out here, you seem to think that they're just low as far as even considering an amount of solar, that they could bring on a lot more solar a lot quicker. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's my opinion.
And do you understand why they are reluctant to do that? Do you understand their reasonings?
Yes, I read witness painters and listened to the justifications that were provided, why they have provided more conservative, I believe they called them targets for solar. As was mentioned by one of the prior witnesses, the economically optimal solar selection was higher than what ended up being in the preferred portfolio supplemental. Our recommendation is just to, for now, accelerate the deployment of that first tranche of solar. Speed it up. This is one, we think that the large customers can help accelerate that through this program. Frankly, we think that we can go beyond that, and that would be, if a mechanism is created to allow those partnerships, then that could go beyond it. There are many utilities who have much higher solar penetration levels, who are operating reliably. And so I don't necessarily think that that's a reasonable justification to delay things. But yes, if you accelerate the targets, there may end up being, for a variety of reasons, logistical, contractual, et cetera, reasons why they may not reach those targets, but setting the target higher will incentivize that development, incentivize economic development in the region, potentially attract more large customers who are interested in, have their own carbon sustainability objectives. And it can provide a lot more flexibility for some of the longer term resource decisions that need to be made. Solar is given a very low ELCC capacity value in this winter peaking system. So, but combining it with storage, kind of on this next several year time frame, would build up the reserve resources on the system and potentially allow for more flexibility. And as these emerging technologies come available over the next 5 to 10 years, Santee Cooper may be able to make other decisions than what is currently available to them. And this, having higher levels of solar, would grant them that flexibility.
As far as immediately, how much solar do you think they could put on within a year?
I am not sure that I would be able to answer that. I think when you get within the year time frame, a lot of it depends on what, has there been an RFP? What are the other parties available? What builds are in the region? But
let's just say if they decided to pursue a large amount of solar, 500 megawatts or whatever, in an immediate situation, if they just said, well, we're going to change our plan and kind of go where other people want us to go, who'd bear the cost of getting that up and running, and the transmission cost that would who would be paying for that? Would the large industries help to pay for that, or would it be the ratepayers?
Well, I think today there is not really a mechanism to, as far as I'm aware, to assign those costs to large customers specifically. If it was part of Santee Cooper's broader resource plan, my understanding is that cost would be kind of distributed amongst their customers. What Google's recommending with the CNI program would be a way to establish an opportunity for large customers to be able to opt in to the procurement of new solar resources, allow for those costs to be basically paid by the opted in customers. And it would have to work, within the coordination agreement with Central. It would have to, the same opt-out clause works there.
Are there funds available directly for that in the Inflation Reduction Act that you can speak to?
There are many different things available in the Inflation Reduction Act as it relates to solar. The investment tax credit and production tax credits have been extended, available for both solar and storage individually, and programs. There are additional bonuses for domestic content, for building in energy communities. There are additional programs such as the Energy Infrastructure Reinvestment Program, I believe is EIR, that provides low interest financing for retiring coal resources and replacing with clean energy. And so there's a lot of opportunities. We kind of think of this as, at least it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for investment in these resources at very low costs, and provides great incentive for looking into these resources.
Sooner rather than later.
Preferably, yes.
Thank you very much. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Afternoon.
Afternoon.
That 500 megawatt facility he was talking about, solar, say, I don't know, and or 100 megawatt BESS. If Santee Cooper decided next week, we're going to do that, in your opinion, how long would it take before electricity is introduced into the grid?
I am not sure about the construction timelines and permitting timelines in South Carolina, so I'm not sure I can answer.
Well, I'm not either. Okay. That's what I'm asking, because I would think 500 megawatts. How many acres is that? How many acres would that take?
Not sure off the top of my head, but it's quite large.
I've heard
a lot of land.
5 to 10 acres per megawatt. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but if it
sounds reasonable.
That's 2,500 to what? 5,000. So somebody's got a 2,500 to 5,000 acres. I assume acquire it, and then I assume you got to do these studies and all that good stuff. I mean, the construction would probably be the easy part. You got to get the materials. I'm just curious about that, because I don't know, and I hear we need to do this. I think if anybody wanted to do it, can you do it? Can anybody do it?
They're fair questions. I think one of the benefits of solar and of batteries is they're modular by nature. So if it's 500 megawatts, theoretically that could be many different projects and locations. So, which can be added kind of incrementally as you go. Maybe instead of waiting 5 years to get 500 megawatts, you kind of do 100 megawatts a year or something. I'm making up numbers, but the benefits of that relative to the large CC is that's kind of an all or nothing thing, right? You have in the environmental permitting for a fossil fuel generating resource is typically much more strenuous. It's a smaller land space, of course, than 500 megawatts of solar, but the permitting process is, from my understanding, more arduous, and if that falls through at any point during the process, then you don't get any of the resource. Whereas with solar, you can kind of get in pieces and kind of build up your broader solar portfolio.
Still take the same amount of land. You're just saying you can scatter it all over if you can find the land in the appropriate place. That being the case, and if you say 100 megawatts a year, if I understand it, they're talking about maybe 300 plus or minus.
Right.
So again, I'm not trying to be combative here, but it honestly sounds like y'all on the same wavelength, unless I've just totally missed something.
No, I was using your 500 example just like as a specific project. I do think, though, that across the broader Santee Cooper region, that we see with other utilities targeting more aggressive annual amounts of solar. And so the land use is a question that would need to be addressed. It would be, it would depend on which developers submit bids. We believe that Google and other customers can help bring these developers to the table and find opportunities, particularly if, the Santee Cooper is showing a desire to accelerate its investments in solar. That would incentivize developers to be looking for ways to acquire more land to serve this new load, and then the process will continue. But it is a question. I understand.
And I only used the 500 because I thought I heard you say 500, maybe accelerate it to 500. I mean, I wasn't.
I said 450 is the recommendation, but it's
okay, plus
yes.
or minus 50. And I appreciate that, and that was helpful. Are you aware of any utility scale, I guess, battery storage facilities in South Carolina?
I am not sure about South Carolina specifically.
What's the closest battery storage?
As far as I'm aware, Duke Energy has battery storage. I'll admit that Duke was one of my prior clients at Ascend Analytics, and we would model battery storage for them routinely. Same time, I admit that they also modeled their pumped hydro storage as batteries, and so I am forgetting in my head if that was something that they had in their system as now, but yeah.
That's quite right. Your rebuttal testimony, page 4, lines 12 through 18, where you talked about derating the capacity of units according to the 2022 forced outage rate, results in a 355 megawatt reduction in available firm capacity on Santee Cooper system. And I think I understand what you're saying, but is that across the broad system? Are you talking about a 355 megawatt reduction across all of their system?
Yeah, so happy to explain how I came up with that. So all of their thermal resources have a nameplate capacity. It's a winter capacity. I'll clarify the maximum that they will run the plant in the winter. And they also have a forced outage rate. They provided the past couple years in the IRP. I was looking specifically at the latest year to be most informative of their recent performance. And multiplying the nameplate capacity by the forced outage rate gives what we consider a probabilistic view of the availability of the resource. Meaning, of course, there'll be many times where they can generate at full capacity, but from a planning perspective, it's important to not assume that every resource will be available 100% of the time, because it just doesn't happen like that. Same way you derate solar or storage based on its ELCC to assume it can only give X amount of energy capacity at any time. That's the approach we're taking with their existing thermal fleet. And so when you multiply the winter capacity rating by the forced outage rate, it derates each one by a certain amount. And in total, if you sum all that up, the total firm capacity is 355 megawatts less than what was presented as the fleet-wide capacity.
All right, but that's what I thought you did. So good. And that's based on just the forced outage rate for 2022?
Correct.
Not looking back over a period of time.
So that was the number that I calculated. There are, I think this was mentioned by another witness, capacity markets across the country are changing to take on this type of approach. MISO, Mid-Continent, ISO, they introduced last year a seasonal accreditation approach, which basically looks at winter and summer periods, and it looks at the availability of the resource based on their historical performance, both overall and at what they call RA hours, or hours when load is within, I believe, 10% of the reserve margin. So like when the resources basically need to be on. And then the capacity market then credits those resources based on the historical performance and only gives them the rating for the percentage of time that they were available. PJM is introducing something similar. Many other ISOs are as well. And so this is basically a way to understanding that no resource is perfectly reliable. We want to just make sure that the sum in aggregate of resources is sufficient for meeting load.
And where you talk about available firm capacity on Santee Cooper system, and this means different things to different people. What does firm capacity mean to you?
So when I describe firm capacity, that is the amount of capacity that we consider to be available in the reserve margin calculation. Nameplate being the total amount it can generate, firm being the amount you would rely upon to be generating.
Okay, I think I understand what you're saying. You can use it anytime.
Yes.
So it's not just a peaking, it's anytime use.
Right. We're looking across all the hours and trying to estimate what, at any given time, how much we should count on to be available.
Then if there's a D rate of 355 megawatts, and if that is the definition of firm capacity, which I tend to think maybe, well, doesn't matter what I think, it's what you think, that 355 megawatts should be replaced with generation sources that can produce a firm capacity over any period of time, correct?
Generally, yes. The reserve margins that is set, the 18% winter reserve margin, takes some of those things into account, and so there may need to be a reassessment of exactly what reserve margin should be used. So it may differ slightly from that 355, but generally speaking, yes.
I understand. And because down here you say that the firm drop, let's see, to account for this drop, Santee Cooper should consider additional BESS to meet the PRM targets and other clean capacity sources to meet demand response. And I get that. I understand what you're saying. But if it's a firm capacity and it's like this dispatchable, I got to be able to use it anytime for whatever period of time. And if it is BESS or solar, then, and again, I'm not the battery guru here. I don't have a clue, but it seems like it's heading in a good direction if it's not already there, as you say. Firm capacity, it's not 4 hours, it's not 8 hours, it's 12 hours, it's however long you need it. So is there something in between there? Or are you saying maybe for the peaking? Now, if we're talking about peaking, I get it. But if you're talking about the firm capacity, I'm not totally following you how the solar
Sure.
in any best combination can satisfy that.
Yeah, happy to elaborate further. The firm capacity is not the way I'm describing it here, is not needed to be an infinite duration firm capacity. The way ELCC ratings are generally calculated is simulations are done over a year with hundreds of different simulations. And what the models are calculating essentially is when the resources are available, when they're needed, a loss of load expectancy calculation, LOLE. Over these simulations, it's simulating the shape of solar going up during the day, ramping down at night. It's simulating the operations of the battery, charging and discharging at different periods, the operations of the traditional resources, their own forced outages, simulating when those will occur, and through all that, determining when resources are available and they need them most. So to categorize, to effectively say that because solar and batteries are not infinitely available really discredits them, because under, again, there's a percentage that's calculated, but under X percentage of time they are available and do generate in the hours when they're needed. They're not perfect either, so they need to be derated accordingly. But it's through that methodology that's calculated.
When I wasn't intending or remotely.
No, I just describing.
That's why I wanted to understand what you meant by firm capacity.
Yes.
Because it can mean different things. Now, if you are talking about like just the reserve margin of meeting that peaking, that duration, makes sense.
Sure.
But I guess what you're saying, the bottom line is all of these things have a place and can be used when used appropriately.
Absolutely.
I think that's it. I'm not going to say anything about the ACC or Cal. Thank you so much. Hope you have a safe trip back when you leave.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belser. Good afternoon. Good to see you. I think in your conversation with Vice Chair Powers, you quickly referenced a program that Google was working on and called it CNI. Please refresh my memory.
Sure. Commercial and industrial, generally speaking, large customers.
And what's the program that you were referring to?
Well, so this program doesn't exist yet, but
it's nothing that's in our testimony.
Correct.
Okay.
It's
because that's where I went looking. I'll let you. Having started the conversation, will you describe it just ever so brief?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is not something that exists today. What the recommendation was in my testimony is essentially for Santee Cooper, Central, all their member co-ops, and the large customers work together to design a program that would allow for these customers to both help bring in solar and battery projects to the system, but also opt into the cost sharing, basically, aspects of those programs, and removing those costs from the default customer, for lack of a better word.
And is that a program that needs statutory support? Is it a program? What's the next step on that program?
I am not sure what's required from either a a statutory or legislative process. I think that's probably part of the conversation that needs to be had, is to determine what exactly is necessary, and whether or not it can be done currently or if any changes need to be made, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And are you aware if Google is a stakeholder working with Santee Cooper?
I believe so. I joined this case after the stakeholder process, so I'm not 100% positive. I don't believe they participated in the stakeholder meetings.
Okay. Have you reviewed the list of items that ORS recommended and Santee Cooper agreed to participate in an ongoing kind of way with the stakeholders?
I have reviewed it. I don't have it right in front of me, but
Okay.
I've reviewed it, yes.
Is that a place for Google to participate?
I think so. I think, based on my discussions with Google, I think they are interested definitely in being part of the conversation with Santee Cooper and with the other stakeholder members. So I definitely think that would be good.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anything further?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Urban?
thank you. I'd like to go back to Commissioner Thomas's thought. I thought it was a very creative and progressive way of thinking about this issue. Since Google obviously has been a world leader in innovation, and since they're located within a stone's throw, I guess, of Santee Cooper, they're both down in the same area of the state. If they chose to work together on a project like they did in, what was the state you mentioned earlier?
Nevada.
Nevada. Do you know any of the details about what they actually did in Nevada there? They work directly with the investor-owned utility there? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't have details on like what specifically occurred in terms of the discussions, the way the contracts were structured with that case. But they did. The project is a 350 megawatt solar and between 250 and 280 megawatt storage project.
They were coupled together that way?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Google has been a corporate resident of South Carolina for over a decade now, and I think they've invested close to $3 billion, if not more, in our state. And they obviously are interested in these issues because you're here at their request. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
And so I would encourage you to communicate with Google that we'd like to hear from them if they'd like to make a presentation to the commission. We have what's called an allowable ex parte hearing process. They could come in and tell us what they did in other jurisdictions. And of course, nothing prevents them from reaching out to Santee Cooper and discussing ways to cooperate and collaborate. If you think that might be a possibility, I think that's a great idea that Commissioner Thomas brought up. And of course, they have a large campus down in Moncks Corner. You know, they might even be willing to lease part of their campus property for a solar and storage facility and lease it back to Santee Cooper or the co-op for that purpose on favorable terms. If they did that, who would be entitled to the investment tax credit under the IRA?
Well, first of all, I think I greatly appreciate the recommendation to have conversations with the PSC. I suspect Google would be very much in favor of that. The investment tax credits are typically I believe the owners of the facilities typically are credited with those.
So if Santee Cooper reached an agreement to lease part of Google's campus for a solar and battery storage facility, Santee Cooper would be entitled to the investment tax credit since they are purchasing the property. Is that right? Purchasing the equipment for the facility.
I'm not sure I know the answer to the question. I think it would likely depend on how the leasing was structured.
Sure. Is it safe to say that some good attorneys could put their heads together and probably come up with a way to apply for the IRA tax credit?
Yes, I think people more familiar with the law could definitely figure it out.
I think so too. I'm not an expert in that area, but I bet it could be done. It's obviously been done in another state, as you mentioned. But pass that along, and if there's any interest in Google's part to come and make a presentation, that perhaps they could tell us what they did in the other state that you mentioned, and perhaps Santee Cooper might like to be a part of that as well. They might consider reaching out, and obviously that's something they'd have to assess based on their interest and needs. But thank you for being with us today, and I have no further questions.
Thank you, and I will pass that along.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioners, anything further? Now, Ms. Shade, any redirect? Mr. Gaby, thank you very much for being here, for your testimony, and sharing your thoughts with us. We appreciate it. And
thank you all.
You may stand down. Thank you. So is Mr. Elliott, is your witness the last intervener witness? That's what I'm showing on my list.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And,
Well.
and we'll be here at the call of the commission in the morning.
Well, we will plan on starting at 9:30 in the morning, and we've got your witness and ORS witnesses, and then see where we go from there. Okay. Anything further before we recess for the afternoon? Well, hearing none, y'all have a good evening, and we will start at 9:30 in the morning. Thank you.